This is part 4 of my Victron Multiplus 2, the 2x120 50 amp unit install in a brand new 2025 Airstream front bedroom twin. In part 3, I talked about my concerns of terminating to these green compression inputs and outputs on the Multiplus. And some people have told me that once you install the wire, or ferrule in my case, it's almost impossible to get them out. So prior to the installation, here's where I stand. Multiplus is installed. The battery, lower left-hand corner, is an Epoch 12-volt, 460 amp hour battery, and lower right, the remaining Victron equipment. So I revisited the bottom and documented the inputs so that I would have a clear understanding of who went where. Then I went back to my schematic and updated it and determined that black is L1, red is L2, which is interesting and important because the Multiplus has a special feature. When you lose L2, L1 will substitute. I decided to use 50 amp breakers on the input and output of the Multiplus, and I'm going to DIN rail mount those. By DIN rail mounting, they're easy to install and also to replace or remove, and decided that that would be installed in the Multiplus chamber under the bed. I did a lot of the work on the bench, which made it easier. Also decided to bring AC2 out. AC2 is a circuit which is hot when shore power is present. Only when shore power is present. It's a non-inverted output, essentially. I use it for heating batteries when I'm not there. I use ferrules on all wire. And when you're dealing with 50 amp AC, it's number 6. I had to wait for orders from my Amazon buddies, and I didn't quite have big enough crimper. I was 1 gauge size short. I also needed to have 3/4 inch long ferrules, which were spec'd as an input to the Multiplus, but when I bought them, they came with a green sleeve. I had to remove that in order to get enough clearance to be able to insert it in and grab. So you'll see it before and after here. So I wired as many of the breaker inputs and outputs that I could while sitting on the bench and tested everything continuity-wise and labeled it. Ferrules make for a nice, solid connection. Pretty happy with the use of those. Here's the DIN rail as it is mounted in the trailer. It's on an existing partition in the outside chamber where the Multiplus lives. Here's a top view of running the wires. Now, there was a judgment call here, and it had to do with how to route those wires into the Multiplus, and deciding not to go through the black grommets for a couple different reasons. Number one, it would have been a pain in the butt to try to route these number 6 wires through there and compress them into the green terminals and be successful. Secondly, if I ever have to maintain this and remove the Multiplus, had I gone through the black grommet, it would have been a bear to remove. So I made a judgment call to go over the top of the black grommets, which required that I modify the shroud that is going to be placed over the termination. So I used my multi-tool and removed a little bit of this and bent it up. I didn't remove it completely because I didn't want to create all those sharp edges. So it's actually just folded up a little bit. But still, I had some concerns about the wire rubbing. And I decided that I would put some rubber sheathing on both sides of the wire as it entered this location. You can kind of see it here on the top. It's actually from flexible cable that I've had. And it made me a little bit happier that the wires would be protected in the case of vibration, which over the many years, hopefully the many years, will probably occur. Here we are installed. The 50 amp input that Airstream provided, that cable was just long enough. I cut it perfect so that I was able to reroute the input to the 50 amp breaker and then take the output from the 50 amp breaker back to the existing fuse box. I did not have to add or subtract any wire. So here's the installation. You notice I've got the multi-control panel installed, also the 7-inch display. And I'm ready to power the thing up, see what happens. Fire in the hole. Hopefully not. And all was well. We're able to bring up the unit, and I'm still learning a little bit about this new display, bulk charging, and I see a red bar on the side. Now that sometimes is green. I need a little bit of help understanding why it's red and green. Did a Bluetooth investigation on the Epoch battery. And now it's time to test this thing for a few days. I've got the VRM running. Next up, we'll be installing the solar charger, and we'll be cutting over the DC. Right now the DC is on the old AGM batteries. Cutting over isn't quite as simple as it sounds because there are a few things that need to be taken into consideration. We'll talk about that in part 5. Thanks for watching. Bye.